Hi guys, it's Orochikochi again and welcome to Ori Talks Football guys. Again, like, subscribe guys, leave a comment on the video and I'm back. I'm going to be talking about Manchester United guys, up the Devils. And yeah guys, league football is back. League football is back. Finally, it's back. It's been such a long time guys. It's been a long time guys. Like, there's been preseason, there's been the World Cup, there's been the transfer window, which is still on, but it's been a long wait. It's been frustrating, and it's difficult, guys, just to keep your eyes focused on something and not think about what's going on with United, because of everything that revolves around United is always blowing out of proportions. So yeah guys, I'm happy finally league football is back. And yeah, now we can get focused, we can get back to business. We can be talking about the game, we can be talking about the things that we love talking about, United. I'm going to give you a preview of the game so far. I'm also going to give you about the preview of the game that they're having tomorrow against Hull City, the first leg of the game, and things that I've noticed in terms of what the club is doing, what they've done in preseason, and what we can look out for in the game tomorrow. And generally guys, just my thoughts on the fact that it's been a reasonably positive on the football side of things. I think in terms of the footballing, tactically, how they look, it's been a positive preseason and build up to the season so far. There's been so many good things that I've watched in terms of the way that they've played, that's carried over to preseason and hopefully carries over into the season. And yeah man, some of the things, some of the parts, some of the nuances in terms of the tactical application of the team, how they look, how they've shaped up, how do they move the ball, how do they defend, how do they press, quality wise, how's the quality of the team, is there a level of growth in the way the team is moving from what they did last season to this season, and can they carry it over. It's one of the things that I could say that I'm looking forward to in terms of the season. The season, United in the last 17 games, I think they won 12 of them, and it was generally a positive end to the season last year. They picked up they were the team that picked up most of the points in the second part of the season compared to all the other teams. So, and there was a period, if you remember correctly guys, there was a period in time where United were actually a few points behind Man City and Arsenal. So if it wasn't for their inconsistencies, they could have been put themselves even in a better position than what they ended in. But either or, I think it was a good progression from the way they ended the season before, third. And from what I've noticed guys, some of the aspects of the game are still the same. I'll start with the positives. I really like the endeavor of the team. There's a good level of energy. And the biggest thing that for me that I really like is the technical upgrade that the team has. You can see that United have shifted more, especially from moment characters to a more offensive and possession-based style of football. We keep the ball a lot better. We keep the ball a lot better for longer periods of time. We have a lot of work to do in terms of breaking up teams that play in a low block. We still have a lot of work to do, especially against those types of teams. But I think there's been good snippets and good moments of play when they've played. I still think we look reasonably comfortable when we play against teams that we can play on the counter or on transitions. That's, I think, where we look at our best, when we can play off turnover ball, or when we press the ball back and win it back, we can quickly get to the attacking side of the game and we look to play on pace. But I think when it becomes a lot more slower and we have to pick the lock against defenses, when we have to play through teams, I still think we have a bit of inconsistency and vulnerability in our conviction towards when we get to the final third. I still think that's an aspect of the game that we need to develop. We need to develop a framework in terms of what we are doing when we get there. I like also the freedom that Carrick has given to the players in order to express themselves more when they get to the final part of the final third. You can see that the Cunhas, the Dogus, the Brunos, even though you can see that everything still does go through Bruno's, but the Amats, the Mbuemos, all the other team, the other players, You can see that there's a level of freedom on technical freedom that they're given to be able to play in roles. They can move around. There's good rotation in terms of the positional rotation. There's good rotation of the passes. But I do think that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the connectivity that we still have to get into the final third. Yes, we have new players. Rashford has come back. That's another thing that's different, because Rashford is a winger who likes to stay out wide, likes to keep his width. He's going to give a lot of pace. It's going to add to that counter-attacking ability that United will have. And I do think that when United are struggling more against teams that I do think will be better than them in possession, having that offensive ability and the counter-attacking ability of Rashford out in the wings will give them a lot of go-ahead and put them in better positions. But I think the biggest question mark, guys, that I think all of us had was, how was the midfield going to look like? What was the midfield going to look like in terms of what are the additions that are going to come, and what's the step up from there that United are going to have to bring into the team so that the team can progress forward. And I'll say that it's not been a perfect window. It's been a frustrating one for sure. But you can see that Andre Santos and Tielemans are players that have been brought in the mold of playing this type of football that Carrick wants, which is keeping the ball longer for much periods of time, more technical ability, more possession-based players. And the thing I like about Andre Santos is, and Tielemans, is the capacity to play the ball forward. You can see that they are always looking forward, very neat in possession, especially Tielemans, especially in the final third. He can add, he can be the second progressive, creative link from deeper, ahead of Bruno, and I think also potentially ahead of Xerxes if he does play as a 10, and he can do that very well. I do think he can play from deep. His passing ability from deep is so important. His controlling the midfield and being able to play, is something that I think that United still need to bring. So I do think that that's a good thing that United have had with Tielemans. Andre Santos, I still have to see more about him. You can see that he does everything relatively well, but you can see that he's very polished in his ball winning ability. I like the fact that he can smell danger. I also like the fact that he understands where space, and he's a proactive closer of space. He's a proactive player who can smell danger and proactively stop it before it happens, which is a good skill to have. I like the fact that he is also said that he likes to play deeper. His position, he sees himself more as a 6, a controller. So having him and having that ability for him to close space and play is a good ability. It's good something to have. But I do think that they still lacked a lot of physicality in terms of the midfield. Because I think you can see that Andre Santos is a central midfielder, still hasn't developed into more of a central defensive midfielder who can screen and play at high level, being the player that can dictate the way of playing from the team from deep. So that's something that is to develop. That's because he's still young. I do still think Tielemans has that, but Tielemans needs legs and needs physicality, and that's I think where United have been lacking, is the ability to have physicality. Guys, I've gone up and down with my thoughts in terms of what United have needed in terms of their third midfielder. But I think after watching the game against Leeds, and also watching the game against Leeds and the game against AC Milan, it really showed me the importance of United having a central defensive midfield and having a bit more pace in the middle. Because United are generally going to have a slow defense. If you look at the first choice defensive lineup, which is Dalot, Maguire, Lisandro, and Luke Shaw, there's not a lot of pace in the defense. And that's why I think that United are not going to be a team that presses high very much. They're going to be a team that chooses their times to press. And I think that's where the alignment from players like Bruno and Ahmad is going to be so important, that from midfield and defense, they press together, because sometimes I do feel like Bruno and Ahmad can just press, but then they are not interlinking the press with all the other players so that they can come together. Because one thing I've noticed from there is United do not get their press right. Because of the lack of pace that they have in defense and the relative lack of pace in covering ground from Tielemans, I do think Santos has the ability to cover space, but he's still young, and I think he's still learning his positioning ability of knowing where to be. Because at Chelsea, guys, remember that Strasbourg, he played more as an 8 going into the box, but didn't really play as a central defensive midfielder. He played a lot of whatever he did in front of him. But being able to understand where danger is going to come from is something that he still has to learn. And I think with the defense that United have, I think it's so important that they needed pace and they needed athleticism in the midfield to cover ground when the players like Dalot and Luke and the other offensive midfield, because I do think that the other 8 in also in Kobe has to be given the freedom to also join in attack. You need to have a midfielder who can be able to screen the defense, cover space, shut down danger, and also take the ball and carry the ball forward when it's necessary. And that's why I think I'm moving into the third signing, which is generally, from what it looks like, it's going to be Carlos Baleba. I think it's a perfect signing, guys. You know, for all the negativity that I've noticed from Manchester United fans, one thing I can say about Carlos Baleba is, let's not forget that, guys, the season before that, Carlos was the midfielder that we wanted. All of us were speaking so many good things about him. We were all praising him for all that he did. But I do think that it's important that we don't look down on a player because he's had a bad season. You know, I think that he still has a lot of good qualities. His athleticism and power in midfield is something that United desperately need. You know, because if I look at the top 6 teams and I look at them, you generally all of those teams have 1 or 2 players that have that capacity. Spurs have gotten Sandro and Matheus Fernandes that are ground eaters, that are central, those are 8s. They cover a lot of ground, high quality in possession. Man City, they bought Elliot Anderson, has that ability also to cover ground, has a lot of speed, has a lot of pace, can cover a lot of good areas. Was in terms of defensive metrics and offensive metrics and covering ground metrics, Elliot Anderson was number 1 in a lot of the metrics that we saw last season. Liverpool, even though he's not a central defensive midfielder, but Ryan Gravenberch is that type of player, can cover a lot of ground, has high energy. Chelsea, the same thing. Moises Caicedo, they also have Enzo Fernandez, covers a lot of ground. It's very good and can cover a lot of ground. It's that guy that can break down attacks. It's very good defensively and can carry the ball when it's necessary for him to do so. Arsenal in Declan Rice and also in Bruno Guimaraes, very good. So you need to have that powerful profile in midfield, because the Premier League is a very physical league, and you need to have that 1 or 2 players in midfield who can cover space and speed, to bring speed. Also, when I look at the defense of Manchester United, because especially the spaces in behind the fullbacks and behind the defense, those are spaces that can be utilized by teams that have a lot of pace. And that's something that I think United needs to have. They need to have a lot of speed and capacity to be able to cover ground. So I think Carlos Baleba gives them that. It's very good. I also think that he has a lot to prove. And because of that, I think he'll have that burning desire to show that he still has that capacity. Very good quality player. The player that I think was, and I think the good thing I liked is about the fact that when it got to, I think last week or the previous week, it got to a point where Michael Carrick, they gave him 3 options in Sander Berg, Tyler Adams, and Carlos Baleba. And because I think Carrick understood what United needed in the team, I think Carlos Baleba is the player that United needed. Let's not forget, let's not use recency bias and think about and just overlook a player who has so many good qualities and has a very good ability to be able to close ground. There's a lot of things that other players don't have. But if you can have that focus and the fact that they have a manager in Michael Carrick who can give him that type of positional sense, understanding of when to go, when to swing, he can develop into that type of player that Manchester United need and can stay for a very long time. So it's a very good signing. I still think we need a left back because of Luke Shaw, his ability, his lack of pace, and because they don't have cover in that area, because Dogu now is going to be a left winger. I still think United need a left wing back or left back. I think Lewis Hall would have been the player that I would have wanted, and Lewis Kelly, because Lewis Kelly also gives us the ability to also play in the middle. But I think Arsenal, because of what they've seen, and also because I've noticed that Bruno Guimaraes has an injury, I think they can see that he's going to be very important, and he's not a player that you can just drop. So I think United, if they can be able to push that boat in terms of getting Lewis Hall, because next season the fear for me is that if he has the type of season that he has this season, I'm looking at teams like Man City, I'm looking at the teams like Chelsea. Those teams don't have any problem splitting 70-80 million pounds to buy a player. You know, you saw Tottenham Hotspur, they just took out 75 million pounds for Savinho, and he had a very underwhelming season, but they took out that money. So when you look at the spending habits of Manchester United, it's so important that when you have an opportunity to get a player, you push it and you get him as quickly as you can. So I would like a Lewis Hall, but I also understand it's going to be difficult. Another player is Adrian Truffert from Bournemouth. I think it would be a perfect player also as a backup to him. I think he has a good quality. I think after this season, I think a lot of teams will be looking at him. So I think also an Adrian Truffert from Bournemouth would be a very good left back. In terms of his age, his ability, I think it's a very good quality. But those are some of the things that are happening. I think for tomorrow's game against Hull, I do think United will win. I think it's going to be a tough game because there's going to be a lot of energy from Hull in terms of them playing. They're going to try and want to prove themselves and have a good start to the season. But I also think United, it's going to be very, very important that United start off the season on the high. Make sure that they show that they are very serious about pushing forward the league this season. I do think in terms of the starting lineup, they'll probably play a back four of Luke Shaw. They'll play Eden Heaven and Maguire. They'll play Dallo, or I'm not sure. I think they'll play Mazraoui for me. They'll play Mazraoui as a right back. They'll play in the midfield Tielemans and Andre Santos. They'll play Bruno as a number 10. They'll play Patrick Dogu, I think, as a left winger. They'll play Ahmad as a right winger, and then they'll play Mbeumo as a striker. I do think that's the team that they're going to start with. I still think Cunha and Mainu and Rashford are going to be players that they put in the second half. But I think that's the starting lineup that they're going to play. If it was up to me, I would have loved if maybe they played sexy, because I think United's technical ability goes up a notch when they play sexy in the team. I think has a lot of good qualities. But I think it's so important that United start this season very well. The start of the season is very kind to them. So it's important that they start off the season on a high. I think they're going to consider. I think they are going to win 3-1. But I think for the season tomorrow, it's important that United start the season with a bang. So that's the start of the season that I'm going to look for. So guys, more is going to come. More news is going to come about United. I hope you enjoy your evening. And until I see you tomorrow, guys. Sharp, sharp.